I will introduce our lecturer for today. So our lecturer is Mr. Thabiso Mphalane, who is from South Africa. He is a native born of South Africa, but he has worked extensively within academia, both in South Africa and in China. So he is currently a learning development facilitator and junior lecturer at the University of Johannesburg. He is obviously a member of the SRC for the Africa and MENA region. He also is the vice president of the Peking University Student Association, an ambassador of South Africa at the International Global Network, and he is also a student and a fellow at the Yalcin Academy at Peking University in Beijing, studying a Master's of Law in China Studies. So I would like to ask Thabiso to put on his mic, and then the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rian, and good afternoon, South African time, and good afternoon, South African time, good afternoon, Beijing time, and good morning, afternoon to everyone who's all over around the world. If you don't mind, I would like to see as to where everyone is from. Just drop in the chat, just say hi, and then I'm from this country, or your current location, while I share my screen in the meantime. Riani, can you please give me access to share the screen?
All right, you should be able to share.
Thank you. Here we go. Minimize this. Okay. Let's go. All right. Thank you very much again for joining me in trying to delve into this lecture. So, you know, when Rian popped the idea, or while we were busy formulating the idea to have the lecture between these two institutions, Africa and Asia, I was like really thinking so hard as to, oh my gosh, what am I going to talk about? But then I realized that we've got a lot of African students that are studying in China, but they're not that much reflected when it comes to media publications as compared to when everybody writes about the Belt and Road Initiative, when everybody writes about China's foreign policy and all of that. So I thought, okay, maybe let me just look at it from the aspect of the African students studying in China. With that being said, the topic that I came with is China, the new Lode-Star for African students. So basically what the topic means here is that, is China now becoming the new destination for African students? Because back in the day, or the traditional route was that each and every African students, they always dreamed about studying at Harvard or studying at Oxford. But now we've been seeing that China is attracting a lot of students. So I was so interested to look into this. And also as well, this forms part of my thesis, my current thesis that I'm busy with, even though for my current thesis, I'm looking at Chinese students and South African students studying both in China and South Africa. Because again, as well, when you hear about these things, it's only about South African students being sent to study in China, but we've got a lot of Chinese students that are coming to study in South Africa. And we also don't see those in media or even in publications. So I'm trying to delve into that. But now here I'm looking at a continental scale, the entire African continent. So with that being said, so here are the objectives of the lecture. So I've divided it into 3 points. So of which the first point, we look at China's influence on the African continent from an educational perspective. So this, I'll be taking it from an educational background as to how did it happen, also including China in coming to the African continent. And then also I'll delve into the idea now as to, is China the new also looking at advantages and disadvantages. And also along those lines, we get to see that once students graduate from Chinese universities, they move now from being student migrants to being work migrants in China because of the many benefits that they get. And then some of them, they move to other parts of Asia and other parts of Asia and America. Only a few of us are able to return to our respective countries. So I'll also be looking into that as to why is this pattern happening. So China's influence on Africa from an educational perspective. So we know very well that China decided to close itself out while the world was integrating. That was like during the colonialism eras, when America and the European unions were trying to do a lot of things across the world, but then China decided to close themselves out. But in 1999, they decided, let's get out of the closet. Policies. And then through that, we started seeing a lot of Chinese people moving to the African continent. And actually, research shows that South Africa was or is a gateway for China, as a lot of Chinese people came to South Africa. And then from there, they expanded to other African countries. So this means that South Africa's relations with China date as far as back in the late 19th centuries, when mostly Chinese people were brought as laborers to come and work in the gold mines, and also in China, and the Chinese communities grew exponentially. So according to research now, it shows that in South Africa, we've got about 350,000 communities of Chinese. But I think this is bound to change because now we are seeing a lot of Chinese movement in East and West Africa, especially in terms of the BRI projects. And then also as well, Africans have been traveling to China for educational purposes since the 1950s. But then these ones were mostly politicians while they were going to China to, to sign memorandums, to get into political diplomacies with China. So mostly they were only sending politicians or people who are working in government on short educational programs. And then during the 2015, after China established the China-Africa Cooperation Summit hosted in Johannesburg, the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, stated that about 200,000 African technicians will be provided with training, 1,000 in the media professions, 40,000 opportunities for Africans in China. So currently the largest number of Africans that are in China, they are in the Guangdong province in Guangzhou, southwest of China. And then also 2,000 degrees for Africans who wants to go and study in China, including 30,000 government scholarships. And then on the other hand, China also promised to establish regional vocational education centers and several capacity building colleges across the African continent. But then is this the case though? Are we seeing this? So in 2015 alone, a total of 6,000 scholarships were awarded to African students to study in China. However, on the other hand, a tech giant aims to support a 5-year information communication technology aiming to train about 1,000 South African students to embrace their Fourth Industrial Revolution through technology and innovation. On the other hand, the Chinese Academy of Science signed a memorandum of agreement with the South African National School of Government to train government officials and business leaders. So with that being said, so now we're seeing that a lot of students now have been moving, but a small proportion going to China. African students here, majority is Black. So in 2019, research shows that more than 5.1 million students were studying around the world for their bachelor's degrees, with Europe being the desired destination. However, China, on the other hand, is increasingly becoming a popular destination for international students, including Africans. And this is the reason because now China, while they were doing their government reform processes, firstly, they were focusing more on the economy, but then they realized that now we need to also include our internationalizations in terms of our universities. For instance, between 2011 and 2016, majority of Asian students opted to study in China on a percentile of 359, of which they were leading. But then now we've been seeing a rising number of African students as well opting to go and study in China because of China's influence in Africa, whereby they grew by a 14% rate as compared to that of Asian students. So what you're seeing here on the graph is that the number of African students studying in China is increasing exponentially. So we see now the data here, it's records from 2011 to 2016. So 20% of African students are in China studying, whereas now in Asia, we're only seeing 6%. The numbers are increasing on an yearly average. Now here, when you look at it from a world scale, as you compare it with South America, Europe, East Asia, and Australia, again, the number of African students in China is increasing so exponentially, as you can see. From 2011, I was only 20,000, but then from 2016, 61,000, even though the data is a bit old, but then it shows that now a lot of and that is for their undergraduate, postgraduate, and also summer school programs, short programs. And then here, when China now is trying to show that now it's driving the world order, because back in the day, it was the UK. We see ourselves as Rhodes Scholars at Oxford and also America with other scholarships. But then now you see now the UK, they've declined by a fair percent average year growth, but in China has increased to 24%, whereas in America is only 5%, and in France now is decreasing to 0.3%. And it should be noted that France used to be the country that was hosting a lot of African students due to its influence in Africa on the Franco-speaking countries. But now again here, we're seeing a lot of shifts. I will delve onto this more. And also again, research still shows that the 2021 academic year will still be dominated by Asian students studying in China. That is those who are outside of China. But then again, we're seeing a sharp increase of students wanting to study in China by 70%. On the other hand, when we look at America, unfortunately, it shows that a lot of them will decline now again, we know that, there's been a lot of things happening that the US is planning to ban TikTok, they've banned WeChat in America. And I find this to be really quite interesting, of which maybe we can delve into it as well in the discussion that, when the US react and ban Chinese content, the world tends to judge the US more harshly. I don't know, maybe it's because Trump is not as charismatic as Barack Obama or Nelson Mandela. But when you look at China, all Google content related materials have been blocked. I don't even know for how long in China. We had to find other ways in order to be able to access them. And then to the next point, European students will still be the third population opting to study in China. But during the 2017 and 11 academic years, a lot of African students chose to study in France. Again, that is because mostly the highest population was those from the Franco-speaking countries. Given that when they get to France, most of them as well, they chose the programs that were taught in French. Only a few of them opted for those that were taught in English. But then again, we still see a lot of other numbers trying to go to China. So here we can see that within a 7-year period, China managed to transform their higher education strategy in attracting foreign nationals. That is through lucrative scholarships. And we're looking at Africans here vis-a-vis their economy, the way they managed to expand their economy, the way they managed to reform their economy, the way they managed to convince people in terms of their Belt and Road Initiative. Now they're trying to convince African students that no, our education is the best. And then here it shows now that where do African students prefer to study for this year and for next year. So when you look at the line graph on your far left, it shows that in the UK, they've declined only about America follows. But then when you look at China, almost they grew from 25,000 to almost 175,000. So whatever China that is doing, they're doing a good job. And this as well, it also works in their favor because now, I think in future, America will be overthrown. But anyway, I think I'm just being too optimistic here. But yeah, I think they're doing a good job here. But then let's look at the advantages. Why are we just all wanting to go and study in China? For example, when you look at in China, they don't provide those rigid exams that you have to write an IELTS or a TOEFL test as compared to America or European universities. I mean, even America is worse because you have to write what they call the GRE test. For example, all European universities, irrespective of whether you went and studied for a summer program at LSE, King's College London, or anywhere. In order to get a full unconditional offer, you have to write the IELTS test, of which I find it to be ridiculous, because when you look at Africa, especially all those countries that were colonized by the British government, all of them, South Africa is one of them, we are taught in English. When we go into these scholarships interviews, we are being interviewed in English, and we are able to communicate and understand each other. But now the only difference is that in order to be taught in classroom, I have to get an English test that I must prove myself. So I find this to be weird. And also, the disadvantage is that most of the scholarships, such as the Chevening Scholarship, you name them, the Commonwealth scholarships, they don't cover the cost for this test, and they're expensive. And then here also another advantage, you find that the visa requirements that we get, student visa requirements that we get to study in China, they don't have rigid requirements such as upon graduation, you're allowed to stay in China. Whereas when you look at other countries, such as the Chevening Scholarship, as part of the contract, you are allowed that when you graduate, you must leave the UK for a period of 2 years without entering their job market. That doesn't mean, of course, if there's a function that is in alignment with your work, you can go there for like a week or so. But then again, they push you out to go back to your home country. As I've said, Chinese visa policies allow students to remain in China after graduation. And then now you see a migration pattern now from being a student visa holder to now being a work visa holder. And then again, the cost of living is too low in China and Asia, and also the safety aspect of it. First time while I was in China, that was in Shanghai, I couldn't believe it that I was able to walk at like 2 o'clock in the morning with my phone in my hand and safely without being worried. But here in Africa, that doesn't happen if you don't end up in hospital. And also you get the opportunity of networking in terms of career opportunities, and also just travel within China and also outside of China. As I've said, the opportunities are endless, and also the cost of living is too low. But then now the other thing is that we've got a lot of Confucius Institute in Africa. We've got one, I'll mention a couple. We've got one from the University of Johannesburg where I work. We've got one from UCT. We've got one from Stellenbosch. The one from UCT and Stellenbosch have been running for a long time, but they only provide Chinese lessons, cultural classes, that is your Tai Chi, martial arts, they end there. At the end of the day, they end up functioning as research institutes because they don't give nothing much to their student community besides Chinese classes. Here is that we see a lot of us studying in China, myself included, they need to reform, because now at the end of the day, these institutions functions as I've said, research institutions, 1, 2, postdoc institutions that when we come back from China with our PhDs, it's easy to get in there and do our research and then leave. They need to start to design programs where they should, or where they must provide a possibility that would lead into faculties where they start to offer students opportunities to learn about Chinese policies, Chinese public policies, Chinese government reform policies, Chinese migration policies. Even if they can do it as a small scale for now, that those who are coming to do their postdoc as Chinese doctorate holders, if you are there for a year, make sure that you come and you teach something that you learned in China. It can be from an economics perspective, it can be from a social sciences perspective. A lot of students, because now they are so interested to learn about China, and in the academic space, they are excluded at this stage. And then also we see now that the Trump administration policies is pushing a lot of African students out of America and other natives. As this works in China's favor. For instance, when the lockdowns was started, the Trump administration announced that the cancellation of foreign student visas or study permits due to online learning. So his idea was that since everybody will just be sitting at their dormitories, why not pack your stuff and go back to your home country and study there? But now there's the new recent debates that he wants to put in place that foreign student visas must be valid for 2 years, irrespective of whether I'm doing a medical degree or my degree is 4 years. So every 2 years I must go and renew my visa and go and renew my visa. So, okay, when you look at this as well, it works in favor for China, and it also works in a favor for the European Union. But then again, what are the disadvantages of studying in China? So now we know that China is not an English speaking country like the EU or America or some of the states that were under the Commonwealth here in Africa. So of course, language barrier is one of the biggest problems. With that being said, the people that get to benefit here in terms of is those who go and study their undergraduates. Majority is that most of them, they are 4 years, but then if you come and study an undergraduate degree in China, automatically it becomes 5 years because they are all taught in Chinese. So the first year is dedicated to extensive Chinese learning. So by the time you start your first year, you know you're Chinese. By the time you finish your degree, you speak Chinese as the way I speak English. And then again, we get this harsh criticism from Chinese students, even though they are not as vocal as we are as Africans, because we know we like to go to the street and protest. They write a national exam that is set by the government, which is the most difficult exam. I don't even know what's the significance. It's called the Gaokao. So in order to get entry into their universities, they have to write that exam, and then they find students like us who get a free pass to get into these universities. And then again as well, we get better scholarships and benefits as compared to them. For instance, my scholarship, I mean, it's one of the best scholarships in China, and we've got lots of benefits that those who are Chinese students, they've been complaining, but they do it underground. And we've also been seeing another scholarship offered at Tsinghua University. It's called the Schwarzman Scholarship. One of the best as well. They build a compound inside the university. If you're a computer geek nerd, you can actually finish the year staying in that without leaving the premises, because that's how better it is. All their lectures in the same compound, dining area and everything, just there in the same area. So a lot of Chinese students are complaining as to why are you kind of making the students your first-class priority and then looking at us as second-class citizens. And then the lack of political diplomacy and media sensitivity as well. There is democracy in China, but it's not as open as what we are seeing in Europe or in America or here in South Africa. So most of them, if you say something that pisses off the government, you'll be lucky if you can get deported to your home country. And then again as well, media sensitivity, they check what you post on Facebook, they check what you post on WhatsApp. And if you post things that they don't like, then they censor that very fast. And then again, there's been this other concerns being raised over quantity over quality here, especially for students who are not admitted into the top universities such as Peking University, Fudan University, Tsinghua University, the ones that are classified as the C9 universities. Because here in those universities, you've got the best professors, and they make sure that their English is on point. We can be able to communicate with them. But then those also get admitted into lower universities in terms of ranking. They've been complaining that sometimes they get professors that don't speak English and they have to supervise them, or sometimes there's only one person in the department who only speaks English, and then they're still supposed to pass. So at the end of the day, are we producing quantity over quality, especially on a master's level? Because now we find that we come to China with little or no Chinese experience. Now we have to deal with this on a daily basis. And then from that aspect now, we see a lot of migration patterns and mobilities. For example, upon graduation, African students opt to stay in China for various reasons. For example, better employment opportunities that comes with great incentives. Those who are working as interns, sometimes their offers get renewed or progress to junior positions in companies such as Huawei. Then they opt to stay in China. And actually quite recently, Huawei was on a mission hunt looking for African students, specifically South Africans, who are studying in China, and they, interviewing them and trying to offer them positions. So that as well, those are the benefits that makes them to stay behind. And then of course, their student visas, payments get changed to work visas. So the policies as well is not as the same as those when you're studying in in the European Union, where they force you to go back to your home country for a certain period of time. And then we opt to remain behind due to the safety and security aspect as compared to our home countries, political instability, corruption, violence, and all of those things. We'd rather remain in Asia or move where else. And as well, given the colonial history of the African states, other African students seek opportunities to their colonies, such as the UK Commonwealth Secretariat. So now, if your country is part of the UK Commonwealth Secretariat, every position that they advertise, you qualify. That's the first benefit. Then now you just have to go through the job specs and see if you need them. Most of us now, we start to run to they've got the one that they run on a yearly basis. It's called the Young Professionals Program. And then we've got, again, the World Bank Young Professionals Program in DC as well. And that as well, everyone qualifies. We've got the Institute of Development Studies as well at Sussex University. They hire everyone. They don't discriminate in terms of nationality. They just, you need to look at the job specs and see if you meet what they're looking for. We've got the WTO in Geneva as well. They hire everyone. We've got the United Nations in New York. They hire everyone, and also other organizations that look for global talent in their job specs. So again, at the end of the day now, you find African talent being scattered around the world. This, I think, a good example can be, we can look at Zimbabwe as a good example. The political instability in that country, it's to another level. So a lot of Zimbabwe's talent is spread across the world because, they want to come back home and change the situation, but the government is just blocking them. There's no employment, there's nothing. We end up staying there. And South Africa as well, it's coming to that stage as well. This is well explained in the next slide. We find that companies and government departments have developed a strategy of underpaying their interns, irrespective of their educational qualifications. An example here is myself. I was working last year before joining Peking University. With an honors degree, you cannot imagine that I was getting paid $4,000. That is equivalent to $240. And again, the disadvantages here is that most of us that are working in South Africa, the Gauteng province is not our home province. So we have to go there, pay accommodation, send money home, make sure that we've got something to eat. How are you going to survive with that? And again, it's just the sad reality. It's that when you're getting paid figures that as low as this, it brings back the, the apartheid special policies. Because back in the day, the white regime tried to chase Black people out of the suburb areas, out of the towns, hence the formulation of the Southern and Western Townships, Soweto. Now you find that Black students are being forced to go stay in Soweto. Some of them were not able even to afford accommodation in Joburg Central. Even in places like such as Maboneng, now it's very vibrant, accommodation is very expensive. Now you narrow it down, we stay in Joburg Central, where you can hear a gunshot anytime. We stay in Hillbrow, but then at the end of the day, we are degree holders. So what was the point? So these are some of the things that makes the clever ones we now start looking to study abroad. And then, as I've said, this fuels graduates to seek employment opportunities outside of the country, or some of us will stay in academia. Again, with that being said, the academia space is not even designed for us as Black people. It's just there as policies, but then when you are inside the academia spaces, certain departments are still white-owned. What I mean by this is that they will make Black students suffer in a sense that you just want to say, I want to pass with a 50% and get my degree and leave this institution. And then when you look at your other counterparts, they are able to pass with cum laude as it's so easy for them. Some of us, I experienced that as well in my previous degree, where we were just being failed for being vocal and trying to challenge things, And then also corruption and nepotism plays a vital role in this migration pattern. Now, in our government, for instance, I'll show you on the next slides. They hire interns for 24 months. After that 24 months, they don't even retain them. So what was the point of hiring someone for 2 years and then you don't take them? And then quite recently, there's been a lot of South African graduates in various social sciences and STEM fields opting to teach English in China. and other major regions because of better employment benefits and competitive salaries, such as they get free accommodation, your flight gets paid for, and then monthly income is about 15,000 RMB. In South African rents, you are looking at like 36,000 rand. So that's a lot of money as compared to getting paid 4,000. So we'd rather leave. And then also this goes to these programs here. When you are being selected to go and work at the World Bank or the Commonwealth Secretariat, they also assist you in terms of visas, in terms of airfare, and also in accommodation for the first or 2 months. At least now you know they give you a kickstart instead of trying to go and get you a visa. So right now, for example, to get a UK visa, you're looking at like 560 pounds. It's like 30,000. Again, if you're a fresh graduate, you can't be able to afford that. But then with all of us who are, as Africans who are scattered across the world, especially Blacks, there's a recurring phenomena of which is the thing called remittances. All of us, we are sending money, and the taxman is really killing us. And then this is the example that I'm talking about. Yeah, just look at the bottom there. This is Department of Science and Innovation. Apparently they are offering, what is it? Graduate internships. Just look at for a PhD level, they pay someone 7,700 rand. In dollars, that's like 421. I mean, you studied from undergrad, honors, masters, and a PhD, then you get paid that. And then when you look at these institutions, the biggest two expensive institutions in the country is the University of Cape Town and the University of the Witwatersrand. Wits University, their registration fee only, it's 12,500. UCT is times that amount, but I'm sure now they've already increased the figures for the next academic year. And then now you start to ask yourself that why is the higher education so expensive, but then when it comes to paying off interns, they're only paid too little. What is the objective then of this degrees that we're fighting for? And then again here, you also find the inequalities again. It goes back to the country's history, that you find Black graduates who've got master's degrees, who've got PhD degrees, that they go to the private sector and they'll go report to a white person who only has a matric certificate because of the country's history. So those things are still alive and they're still happening. Quite recently, I was speaking to a colleague of mine. She applied for, she's an industrial psychologist, applied for industrial psychologist with a company here in South Africa. I'm not gonna mention their name. They interviewed her, she checked all the boxes. The only thing that she was judged on was her skin color. Somebody from HR said in private, said that, unfortunately, they're not going to take you. This position, they want a white person. They had to take that entire program and divide it into an internship. And the idea is that they are looking for a white student. Once they get that student, then automatically at the end of the internship, they'll hire that person on a permanent basis. So these are some of the things that we are facing that are forcing a lot of African students to go overseas and contribute to European Union's economies, American economies, and hence the underdevelopment that we are facing in Africa to date. And then here, as I've mentioned already, it's like you are sitting on an internship for 4 months, and then at the end of that duration, employment. And then again, there's been this argument that even as interns, when we are sitting in these jobs, we are not even being trained about that job. The only thing that they will tell you is to reply to queries, replying to emails, and then making photocopies. And then some of them, they go as bad as, when people come and deliver office furniture, they'll ask you to come and carry this for me. Whereas they've got their occupational health policies and all of those things in place that they can be able to hire securities to come and lift those things, but then they still ask interns to come and do those things for themselves. And then again, we found that universities uses these vague statistics saying that, especially I looked at 2 universities again, Fourth University and the University of Cape Town, where they'll say that after a year, 90% of our graduates find employment within 6 months or whatever that they say, but then they fail to provide a thorough analysis as to how did the students find employment, because now they just send you a survey where you just put your name, your student number, university ID, and then tell them if you're working, and then that's it, you submit that survey. They don't go into detail as to like, how were you hired? What's the duration of your program? Is it an internship? Do they even do follow-up and all of those things? They just use those statistics, unfortunately. And I mean, again, as you can see here, UCT claims that 20% of its graduates earn more than 20,000 Rand per month. That I disagree with. I can tell you right now, as you've seen on the previous slide, irrespective of which university you come from, to what I was getting paid, 4,000, those things that are getting frustrated. And with that being said, that comes to the end of my presentation. Thank you. In Chinese, we say, xie xie.